Hi everyone. The topic today is about a parser. Uh, how we are going to parse a SQL unstructured data and transforming into a structured data. We have been using parser in our project with knowingly, without knowingly, in many times. Like when we use a ORM framework, the framework internally uses a parser to parse a string query which we gives, and similarly a Java compiler, when we write the Java code, while compiling it parses our Java code against the grammar and see whether is there any mistake or any compile error, and it will notify the developer. So parser is used in most of the time, and many a time we will be using in the REST client to parse a string XML to convert to XML object. So here today's topic, how we are going to convert string data in the form of SQL query to a structured data where the developer can use it for his performing operation on it. Okay, now, so the general description of a parser, what is a parser? It is just a program to convert the unstructured content into a structured content. Why do we want to do this? Because with unstructured data, we can't do what we are intent to do. When we know the structure, how the content is there, we can operate on top of it and we can modify it according to our will. So one of the example I gave is a Java compiler, how it internally compiles the code and convert it into a class file. Then the XML parser, we have the JSON parser, everything.
So mainly the parser is, if you define what is a parser, the parser means
It's a program to convert unstructured content into a
yes,
structured data.
yeah.
So that's a short definition of a parser.
So that means the SQL parser means you can convert the plain SQL query to the structured data to Java to understand.
Yes.
So that is the SQL parser usage.
Yes. So now SQL parser, in the sense, when we give, it can be of any structured query. You can give of any product like Oracle, DB2, MySQL. There are many community versions and many enterprise versions. The one of the open source which I found is useful is called the JSQL Parser, and the enterprise editions have more features that you can perform more operations. But because of the costly and effective nature of it, we don't go with that, and we just take an open source which is better for us, and we are going to understand how it is working in a high level, not in a detailed depth, but in a high level. So what is a JSQL parser? It just passes a plain string. A plain string a system cannot understand. We just give it in the unstructured form. Then the program will read and scan through the plain string and convert it into a structured data. Then how it works actually? So whenever a product or a tool is being developed, it's developed based on a certain feature, certain design, and it's including some kind of internal execution pattern. So how this JSQL parser is developed? They are using a feature in the Java CC, a Java compiler one. What it is a kind of a parser. There are many kind of parser. We can use a framework like ANTLR, which is a framework which is used for, which is very famous for parsing unstructured data. And here they are using the Java CC, and it is an open source parser generator. And one is a tool they use, the framework they use to design the parser. Next is the pattern in which the SDK is being developed. So there are various design patterns. The design patterns which can be which has been selected for this parser is called a visitor pattern. Visitor, the short definition of it, visitor pattern is like you separate the algorithm from the object on which the operation is performed. When you want to perform an operation on something, you don't perform on top of the operation, on top of the object directly, because you are going to there will be some features which is not there, so it will actually block you from performing. So when there is a segregation between that, you can develop your own object according to your logic without touching the actual object or the actual instance. So this is a short definition of the visitor pattern. So you segregate the algorithm from the object on which the operation is being performed. So this is a high level UML diagram, how a visitor pattern classes will be designed. I don't want to go into the depth of it because design patterns, it will take a long time to get explained, and our topic is not based on that today. So, for example, giving you example how a visitor pattern is implemented in a car. A car can have a many element, right? When you say a car, it is a parent object. Underneath, it has a many sub modules. Like a car can have a wheel, engine, body, and many more things, right? So now, when you have a car, the sub modules are classified as elements. So now, when you want to perform on top of the elements, one way is to you go directly into the car object and perform it, which is not good. It's a bad idea because you're actually performing on the actual object. The other way is to you perform on the elements given by the car, and use your operation on your own object, which is nothing but the visitor implementation here, car element visitors. So this is the segregation. Okay. Apart from theoretical, I thought it would be best explained with the example.
Please go back to the previous slide.
Yes, Ajay.
So the car visitor pattern.
Yeah.
Just okay.
So the car visitor pattern is something like you have the wheel, engine, body, car is everything. You have the one signature called accept. So the method should be like whatever in the part of your car, there should be a method called accept or run. So that's will call visitor. So you need to define all my component, all my classes, all my Java component has to have the one method should have it. So but the implementation of something is very different. So that's we call one of the visitor pattern example in here.
Yeah. Here, so this is the entire car element, right? So when you want to perform an operation, you don't perform on this entire element over here. Instead, there is a visitor which is defined for this car element, and you can extend this and perform. So you will be only modifying your own class which you will create here. For example, the developer has created a car element print visitor and a car element do visitor. You can have your own class, say car element drive visitor, drive, like for driving a car, for painting a car, a different thing. So which means you are not modifying the actual object given. Instead, you are defining your own class. So it's easy for you to give your own logic and add methods and remove methods. There is one good definition I read in the forum saying that this JSQL parser is designed based on an open closed principle. Open closed principle in the form of a programming is called, when you define an object, it should be open for extension, which means another developer can come and extend your object, but it should be closed for modification, which means they cannot come and modify you. Anybody cannot come and modify your object. So you should design your object or your program in such a way that it can be extensible by all those who are using your object, but they should not be allowed to modify it. So this is open close principle. Okay, going
how
to
is this? So you'll be covering how this is utilized in JSQL Parser.
I'll be covering how the JSQL parser converts a plain unstructured data into structured data.
Yes, using the
JSQL parser, yeah.
Using the visitor pattern.
Visitor pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we apply the visitor pattern. Like for example, now we understand what is visitor pattern. So apply this visitor pattern to our real example. So how the SQL parser, like JSQL parser, using the visitor pattern to convert the unstructured data to structured data. So that is the main objective of the session. So I'm going to go back to the slide. You see the code.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Practical example.
Yeah.
So the last slide is like practical example. We
Yeah.
show how it.
So now it's a demo time.
Yeah.
So
Here you can see. Okay, here this is my simple query. It's a plain string. As a developer, we can understand it is a SQL string, but to the program, it is just a plain text. So it is called unstructured data. We are just selecting name, address, joining date from a customer. This is not an actual table, but it is just a query. We will see how this unstructured data converts into a structured form.
Akbar, can you walk through what is a SQL query and how which method is supposed to be doing the parser first?
Yes. Okay. So as I have told, this is a SQL query we are going to parse, the select query. Okay. So this is the object which is going to parse, which is called parser manager. So we feed the SQL string into the parser manager, and we call the inbuilt method which is parse. So what it does internally, it scan through the individual words or the unstructured data and convert into an object. So here when we pass, so now I'm just creating an instant of it. Uh,
It is hank. So I use this time. So the SQL parser, how it means it, like let's say we write the very complex query, um, like a few where condition, few order by, few group by, then we have left it's a lot of joins. So the query very complex. So in the Java world, how the people do that, there is a separate SQL developer. They develop the SQL query. So that's a separate team can develop the complex SQL query, and that SQL query will be integrated by the Java developer. So when Java developers come that query, they have no idea like how the query has been written and how the queries has been planned. So if you pass through the SQL parser, you can able to understand in that query what are the where condition, what are the order by, what are the group condition, how the joins works. So so once you pass the entire SQL query, the plain SQL query to the SQL parser manager, then followed by you can you can structurally, okay, what is my statement? Okay, Agamadi, I'll give to you. So what is a statement? What is a order by? What is a group by? What are the join? So you can easily get the object very simply just passing the plain SQL query to the SQL manager.
okay, here I'm just going to pass the query, string query to this object, and after parsing, it will give me a statement in a Java object form. So if you want to see what is a statement look alike, you can see at the variable here. See, after after parsing the string query, it has given me a select object. This is actually a Java object. So select body. So in the select body, it can have a distinct, it can have a from item, it can have a group by, all this. So when you take a SQL query, it will have the three structure which you can take it out from a string is it will have a select part, and it will have a from condition, and it will have a where condition. So this is what the parser is giving me. See, after parsing the SQL query, what it is giving me is it is giving me a list of select items. So if you see in the list of select items, I have selected three field: name, address, joining date. So these are the individual data. It has chunk it out into three fields, if you can see from the plain string. If I now select, if I want the get only the select fields, right, I can use this object and get the fields. So I'll have a three field elements. The first one will be my name, second is my address, third is my joining date. Then, so this is the select part of the SQL query. The next section will be the from. So the select query is selected from a table called customer. So here it is. Am I using an alias for the table? Yes. What is alias? The alias is C. Customer as C. So this is alias name. So it structure it into a alias field now. Now what is the name of the table? Here it is customer. So this is how the query has been parsed into a structured form. So now,
Hey, Naman,
yes, Ajif?
question.
Yes.
So the JSQL parser, who executes the SQL query to get the data?
No, Shaji, it's
The
not.
JSQL parser does it, or it just parses the query?
Just pass the query, Shaji. The JSQL parser does not execute the query.
So
So
it
you
just
have,
passes the query, but
yes.
can it execute the query too?
No. Execute query, we need a traditional
Database.
framework, database, Hibernate, Hibernate are our traditional JPA method. So this is something very simple to take the query and to understand the query in the structured format before we execute it. So the query, the JSQL parser does not execute the query. It's only the developer can understand from unstructured format to Java format.
Okay, so it is, okay, now got it, okay. So it is primarily, it gets the query, puts it into in an object form, and then I use that object and feed into Hibernate.
Yes.
And execute it.
To make it more simple, in the database, we take a MySQL database, right? It has a different phase. When a developer send a query to the MySQL database, it will not execute the query immediately. It will have a different phase, like a validation phase, parsing phase, because the database has to know whether the query coming into the database is whether it's correct, is it in a proper structure. If I just say select star customer, so it is not a proper query, right? I'm not giving the where condition, from condition. So internally the database uses different phases to validate, structure it, and understand in its own term, because what we are writing is a developer form, the string query. The MySQL database has its own grammar, and it will convert the plain query into its own structure before executing. Those are internal structures we don't know externally. So if you want to take those phases into a developer hand, right? So these kind of parser help us. So this will give a high level idea how the internal structure of the Oracle database converts a plain string into a structured form, then it executes and it's valid. Validate, then it's execute. So if you want to validate the query in the developer, it's like a front end validation before going to the database and throwing an error back to the developer. You understand, Sajid?
Yes, I think the main objective is you can write the query in any format. The Java developers does not worry about how you write the query. So we will pass there. Java developers can understand what is object and how it's structured. So they can go through this object. They can understand how that where is my where condition, what is a join, what is a left outer join, right outer join. Because the left outer join, outer join is a different implementation for the SQL Server, Oracle, and MySQL. But the developer can add the extra join condition through the object.
Yes.
So for a very simple example, let's say we take one complex project, the SQL developer write the query in their own method. There's a query is very complex. And we have 10 developers, and 10 developers they have different implementation. So they don't want to, some people they don't want to join condition, some people they don't want to order by, some people they don't want to group by. So they can pass the SQL we use a single query because The one is the one is the SQL side. If we have too much of query, then there's a fine-tune issue. So we minimize the query. So once the query is very optimized, then Java developer can cut down what is extra object. So that's where the SQL parser will be helpful for the project. Like a very complex. This is not a simple project. Should be a very complex project. You have one SQL query, then the developer can play around the query in their own Java object. Then after that, they can execute based on the business implementation. For example, today you say first name, last name in the query. Suddenly, your the business object required. Hey, I don't want the first name. So you have one condition: whether do I want to change the SQL query in the SQL or change the object in the implementation. If you change the SQL query in the SQL, all the usage will be affected. For example, the same query is being by 10 people in the 10 different projects. So these people will say, no need to remove that column. I want that column. So people will ask this question. Then we end up with, we have duplicate the SQL query again for that particular implementation. So here for easy Java developer, they can remove that the first name in their Java implementation, then they execute it. So the SQL query never be changed. The other people also will not going to affect that. So that is the main usage. I see my own personal experience. Maybe have a different thought for different people, but this is my personal thought.
Even for our VPDC, right? When the portal send the VPDC XML containing all the changes, it comes as a plain string. We are parsing the plain string into Java objects and to see whether the VPDC is already deployed to perform further actions. So we are using everywhere the parsing. So in order to understand that, this gives a rough idea how the parser is internally works in different environment and for different criteria.
Any question? And you can use it in different way, but this is the you can put the different business case how you want it. But this is one of the business case. Flexibility in the Java developers who can strong in Java, they like it.
Okay, now after selecting the parsing the plain query, now this is my query actually. If you see, this object contain my full query, and now I can break it down into smaller elements. Now I want to see whether this query contain a distinct. So now what I can do is I can say get distinct, it is null. So I'll know that okay, there is no distinct in this query. So this is how you can parse and convert it to a Java object. I just want to make it very simple. Don't want to go in depth how it works, how you can do. But this high level will make everyone understand how a particular parser works for in the individual environment. Okay, that's it for from
So
me.
the line number 16 can you highlight it, this accept method, how that how
It's right.
69, 68, line number 68, yeah, accept method. So just go accept method. This is the step pattern, right? So the select item is it will validating your query before accepting. That is the most important. For example, your select item, where condition, order by, group by, it's a different natural. They all have the accept method. Should accept first. So once it's accepted is pass, that means your query is good to execute. Just I want to see accept method as well.
Set a breakpoint. So this is my custom visitor implementation. Any modification, I can extend this class and play around it. This is what I'm doing. Instead of working on the actual query object, I'm just extending the visitor method here, and I can play around. So now
Instant done.
So when I send it to accept, right, it is going to the particular visitor which I'm sending. So here, so now you can see the code comes into my custom implementation where I can play around.
Sure. Then we can stop. Yeah. Thanks, Ahmed.
Thanks so much. Very